1991, an 8-year-old girl vanished from her own bed in the middle of the night. No sound, no struggle, no trace. For 9 long years, her mother lived with silence, until one ordinary afternoon. She pressed play on her daughter's forgotten toy recorder. What she heard shattered her world, and reopened a case everyone thought was lost. May 3, 1991, Friday night. A small house on Willow Creek Road. One streetlight over the yard. The neighborhood stays quiet after 10. Inside, a girl sleeps in a pink room at the end of the hall. Name Rachel Hart. Age 8. Brown hair to the shoulders. Small gap between the front teeth. A blue ribbon on the nightstand. A red and yellow toy recorder under the bed. Peeling stickers on the case. Her mother, Ellen, moves through a simple routine. She rinses plates. She wipes the counter. She locks the back door. She checks the front door. Bolt in place. Chain in place. She switches off the kitchen light. She looks down the hall. The nightlight paints a small pool on the carpet. She pauses at Rachel's door. She listens for slow, even breaths. She sees a small shape under the blanket. She pulls the door 2 inches to. Same as every night. Mark, the father, is on an overnight route. A distribution truck rolls along Highway 19. He talks to dispatch. He drinks coffee from a metal thermos. He counts the miles left before the next stop. He thinks about Saturday morning pancakes. He plans to be home by noon. Time moves past midnight. The house stays quiet. A dog barks once, far off. An engine passes on the distant road. Curtains lift in a faint draft. 2:11 a.m. Ellen wakes. No alarm. No loud sound. A shift in the air pulls her from sleep. The room feels cooler than usual. She sits up. She listens. The refrigerator hums. The clock ticks. She stands and walks to the bathroom. On the way back, she notices the door to Rachel's room. The gap looks wider. For inches, not 2. She stops. She sets a hand on the edge and nudges it inward. The room sits in thin moonlight. The bed shape looks wrong. Smaller. Flatter. She steps in. She touches the blanket. Flat. She touches the pillow. Warm. No child. Rachel. One word. Low voice. She checks the closet. Dresses hang in a neat row. Shoes sit in a line. She drops to her knees. She looks under the bed. Dust. The toy recorder. No child. The window by the bed is cracked open an inch. Ellen never leaves windows open at night. She pushes it shut. The latch clicks. She looks out into the yard. Grass shows a sheen of dew. Hedge line still. No easy sign. She walks fast now. Bathroom. Empty. Living room. Empty. Kitchen. Empty. She unlocks the back door and checks the step. No one. She locks it again. She unlocks the front door and looks across the yard. No movement. She locks it again. She runs back to the bedroom. She grabs the phone on the nightstand. She dials 911. Her hands shake. 911. What is your emergency? My daughter is missing. She was asleep. She is not here. Address, please. She gives the address. Do not touch anything. Stay near the front door. Officers are en route. Ellen stands by the door with the phone to her ear. She trembles. She breathes in short bursts. She says, please hurry, more than once. Red and blue lights paint the walls within minutes. 2 patrol cars. An officer steps inside and guides Ellen to the couch. He asks simple questions. Last time you saw her? Any visitors? Any family in town? Any recent work at the house? Any problems at school? Another officer checks the bedroom. He shines a small light along the window frame. A faint scuff on the sill. The screen sits in place. No pry marks. He steps outside and sweeps the beam across the grass. Dew beads reflect and blur. No clear prints. A slight bend in the hedge near the corner. They photograph the room. They collect the sheets and the pillowcase. They dust the window frame. They bag the nightstand items. They note the recorder under the bed. The officer presses the red button. Nothing. Dead batteries. He writes a line in his notebook. He slides the recorder back. A sergeant arrives and sets a perimeter. Units fan across the block. They knock on doors. They wake neighbors. Have you seen anyone? Did you hear a car? Did a dog bark? Any visitors on the street? A K-9 team enters the house near dawn. The dog sniffs the sheet, then the pillowcase. The handler gives a command. The dog moves out the front door across the yard to the street. The nose follows a faint path for 20 yards. The dog stops near the curb and circles. The handler shakes his head. Scent ends near the road. Sunlight climbs over the trees. Mark pulls his truck to the curb and runs to the porch. He steps inside. Ellen meets him in the hall. She tries to speak. No sound comes. He wraps her in his arms. He looks past her and sees the open door to the pink room. Detectives enter at 8. 2 suits. They introduce themselves and speak in calm voices. They rebuild the night block by block. Timeline. Work schedule. Phone records. Lock checks. Window checks. Any recent strangers. Any family disputes. Any deliveries. They go room by room with a camera. They take wide shots. They take close shots. They mark each item they touch. They place evidence bags across the kitchen table. Toothbrush. Hairbrush. Hair from the brush. The blue ribbon from the nightstand. A small sweater from the closet. They seal each bag and sign the seals. By late morning, a command post stands at the fire station. A map of Willow Creek sits on a folding table. Sectors marked in tape. Volunteers line up to search fields and creek banks. Captain briefs the teams. Walk in rows. Keep your spacing. Call if you find any cloth, any small shoe, any ribbon. News vans roll in by noon. A camera faces the porch. A reporter speaks with a careful tone. 8-year-old girl missing from her bedroom. No sign of forced entry. No note. The town holds its breath. Ellen hears the broadcast through the wall. She turns off the television. She stares at her hands. The first day ends with no result. The second day brings a tip about a dark sedan near the park. Officers track it to a house painter who shows a work order on the street. Clear. The third day sends teams downriver. Nothing on the banks. The fourth day brings a call from a truck stop 2 towns over. A girl with brown hair in a red sweater. Patrol checks. Wrong child. A week passes. Flyers go up on poles and at shop doors. The school photo shows a bright smile under neat bangs. Missing in bold letters. A hotline number at the bottom. Parents walk their children to school. Extra locks go on windows. Porch lights stay on past midnight. Inside the Hart house, routine turns into ritual. Ellen writes every name she hears on a pad by the phone. She logs every call time. She writes every officer's badge number. She refolds the blanket on the bed each morning. She sets the stuffed rabbit upright against the pillow. She keeps the door open 6 inches, not 2. Mark fills the hours with action. Posters. Calls. Door-to-door checks. He drives routes only when he must. He spends nights on the couch in the hall, near the pink room. He watches the doorway until dawn. Detectives widen the circle. They pull phone records from the week before the abduction. They check registered offenders in a 50-mile radius. They revisit every neighbor interview. They pick up one thread, then another. Each thread ends in air. Week 2 closes with a press briefing on the lawn. A detective reads a short statement. Ongoing investigation. Do not spread rumors. Call with tips. He answers a few questions. He offers no new details. Ellen walks down the hall each night and stops at the doorway. She looks at the bed. She listens to the quiet. She says a single sentence before turning away. I am here. 9 years later, those words remain. The house holds them the same way it holds dust in the corners and pencil marks on the doorframe. The date on the calendar changes. The message does not. Rachel Hart was born on July 18, 1983, in Willow Creek County Hospital. She came into the world small, with a head of dark hair and wide brown eyes that seemed to take in everything. Her parents, Mark and Ellen, were young but determined. Mark worked long hours as a truck driver. Ellen balanced part-time shifts at the local clinic. They didn't have much, but what they had went toward their only child. Neighbors remembered Rachel as the kind of child who made friends with anyone. She had a habit of waving at strangers from the porch swing, sometimes shouting, "Hello," loud enough to make passersby laugh. She collected wildflowers from the yard and brought them to her mother in mismatched cups of water. The Hart family lived in a modest two-bedroom house at the far end of Willow Creek Road. Yellow siding, a creaking porch swing built by Mark, a garden where Ellen tried, year after year, to coax tomatoes from stubborn soil. Inside, the house carried the clutter of a child. Crayon drawings taped to the fridge. Doll shoes under the couch. A basket of half-finished school projects in the corner. Mark's work kept him away overnight more often than he liked, but weekends were sacred. Saturday mornings meant pancakes. Rachel perched on a stool in the kitchen, stirring batter with too much enthusiasm and spilling flour on the counter. Sunday evenings were slower, the family sitting together on the porch swing, watching the sun sink over the creek. Ellen and Rachel had their own rhythm during the week. They read together before bed. They walked to the library every Tuesday. On warm nights, Ellen let Rachel stay up late to chase fireflies. By 1991, Rachel was 8 years old, a second grader with an endless stream of questions. She loved singing, even if she was always off-key. She made up songs on the spot about the dog across the street, about her teacher's chalk, about the weather. Her laughter carried through the house, quick and sharp, often coming at her own jokes. Her best friend was Annie, a girl from 2 streets over. The two rode their bikes together every weekend, pink and purple streamers whipping in the air. They built forts out of blankets. They shared secrets in whispers no louder than the rustle of leaves. Rachel's teacher described her as curious but restless. She often finished her work early, then distracted the class with questions no one expected. Why do clouds float? Where do birds sleep? If someone disappears, do they still dream? For her 7th birthday, Mark had bought Rachel a red and yellow toy cassette recorder. It was simple, plastic buttons, a small built-in microphone, a strap so she could carry it around the house. She used it constantly. She sang into it. She told stories into it. She even walked up to her parents with the microphone, asking pretend interview questions like, "How do you feel about cooking dinner tonight?" Ellen often found the recorder tucked under Rachel's pillow in the morning. She teased her, saying, "Are you keeping a diary on tape?" Rachel giggled and said, "It's for me and Annie to listen to when we're grown up." That recorder became part of Rachel's routine. Her voice filled tape after tape. Little pieces of her life, captured without anyone realizing how precious they would become. Looking back, Ellen would remember all these details, the pancakes, the porch swing, the fireflies, the toy recorder, as if they were treasures. She replayed them in her mind again and again after that night in May 1991. Because when Rachel disappeared, it wasn't only a child who was taken. It was a future. It was birthdays uncelebrated, songs unsung, questions unanswered. And for 9 long years, Ellen would hold on to those memories, because they were all she had left. May 3rd, 1991. A Friday night like any other. Dinner was simple, spaghetti and garlic bread, Rachel's favorite. Afterward, Ellen washed dishes while Rachel hummed a tune in the living room. Mark left for his overnight delivery shift around 8, promising to be back by Saturday afternoon. He kissed Rachel on the top of her head, told her to behave, and carried his thermos out the door. At 9, Rachel begged to watch The Little Mermaid on VHS. Ellen let her, though she set a strict bedtime afterward. By 9:30, the credits rolled. Rachel dragged her feet toward the bathroom, brushed her teeth with exaggerated faces in the mirror, then slipped into her pajamas, pink, with faded stars. Ellen tucked her in at 10 p.m. sharp. She read 2 chapters of Charlotte's Web as she always did. Rachel yawned, hugged her stuffed rabbit, and asked, "Will you check on me later?" "I always do," Ellen whispered, pressing a kiss to her forehead. She pulled the blanket tight, set the recorder on the nightstand, and left the door cracked 2 inches. Always 2 inches. By midnight, the house had settled. The only sound was the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional drip of the faucet. Ellen lay in her bed, the glow of the hall nightlight faint beneath the door. Mark's truck rumbled miles away on the highway, headlights cutting through the dark. Outside, the neighborhood was still. A dog barked once, then went silent. 2:11 a.m. Ellen's eyes opened. No alarm, no clear noise, just the sudden sense that something was wrong. She lay still, listening. The air felt cooler than it should have. She slipped out of bed, padded down the hallway toward the bathroom. On her way back, her eyes caught Rachel's door. The gap looked wider. 3 inches, maybe 4. Her brow furrowed. She reached out and pushed the door softly. The moonlight stretched across the carpet, spilling over the small bed. The blanket was smooth, too smooth. Ellen stepped closer. The stuffed rabbit sat at the top of the bed, untouched. The pillow was warm, but the bed was empty. Her voice came out thin, unsteady. Rachel. No answer. She checked the closet. Dresses hung still. Shoes lined up. No child. She dropped to her knees, looked under the bed. Dust. The toy recorder. No child. The window above the bed was cracked open an inch. Ellen's pulse jumped. She never left it open at night. She slammed it shut on instinct. Only then did she realize what she'd done, closed what could be evidence. Her chest tightened. She turned and rushed through the house. Rachel! Rachel! Her voice tore through the silence. She ran to the bathroom. Empty. The living room. Empty. The kitchen. Empty. She flung the front door open, calling into the night. Only the sound of her own panic echoed back. She grabbed the phone on the nightstand. Her fingers shook as she dialed. 911. What is your emergency? My daughter, she's gone. She was in her bed. She's not here. Please. The dispatcher's tone stayed steady. Stay calm, ma'am. What's your address? She rattled it off through sobs. Help is on the way. Do not touch anything else. Stay near the front door if you can. Within minutes, red and blue lights washed over Willow Creek Road. Patrol cars screeched to a stop. Officers entered the house, calm but quick. One led Ellen to the couch, asked questions in clipped tones. When did you last see her? Were the doors locked? Any signs of forced entry? Another officer examined the window. He shone a flashlight along the sill. A faint scuff mark. The screen still in place. The dew outside showed no clear footprints. The search began immediately. Dogs sniffed Rachel's pillowcase, then pulled their handlers down the street. They stopped at the curb, circled, then sat. The trail ended there. By dawn, neighbors stood outside in robes, whispering in clusters. Police cars lined the street. Volunteers fanned out, combing the fields and creek banks. Helicopters circled overhead. Ellen clutched Mark's jacket around her shoulders, watching it all unfold as if it were someone else's nightmare. But it was hers. Her daughter was gone. By sunrise on May 4, 1991, Rachel Hart's disappearance was no longer a family crisis. It was a full-scale investigation. Patrol cars idled at every corner of Willow Creek Road. Yellow tape stretched across the front yard. Officers moved in and out of the house, gloves on, notebooks open. The Hart home, once ordinary, became a crime scene. Photographs of the bedroom, measurements of the window, fingerprint powder brushed along the sill. Evidence bags filled with blankets, pillowcases, and toys. Even the stuffed rabbit, Ellen's last memory of tucking her daughter in, was sealed and labeled. Ellen sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. Her hands trembled as she answered the same questions over and over. What time did you put her to bed? Was the door locked? Did she have enemies? Anyone who might want to harm her? Her answers never changed. She was asleep at 10. The doors were locked. She was only 8. She had no enemies. Mark arrived mid-morning, his delivery route abandoned as soon as dispatch reached him. He burst through the door, pale and frantic. Ellen collapsed into his arms. He whispered her name again and again, but there were no words left between them, only shock. By mid-morning, a command post had been set up at the Willow Creek Fire Station. Maps of the town spread across folding tables. Colored pins marked search zones. Officers briefed volunteers in clipped voices. Walk in a straight line. Keep 10 feet apart. Check sheds, garages, ditches. Anything. A ribbon, a shoe, a scrap of clothing. Report it immediately. Helicopters flew overhead, sweeping the creek bed and the surrounding woods. Search dogs strained at their leashes, noses pressed to the ground. One followed Rachel's scent down the hall, through the front door, and out to the curb. There, the trail ended, as if she had vanished into thin air or into a waiting car. By noon, dozens of neighbors joined the search. They knocked on sheds. They looked under porches. They waded into the shallow creek. They called her name until their voices went hoarse. But the town gave back only silence. By evening, news vans crowded Willow Creek Road. Reporters stood on the lawn, speaking into microphones while cameras panned across the house. An 8-year-old girl has vanished from her bedroom. No forced entry. No ransom note. Investigators fear abduction. Ellen stood behind the curtain watching the cameras flash. She turned away, unable to bear it. Mark paced the kitchen, fists clenched. To them, the house already felt like glass. Every detail exposed, every failure on display. Tips flooded the sheriff's office. A girl spotted at a truck stop 2 towns over. Another reported at a carnival. Someone claimed a relative had taken her. Each tip was pursued. Each tip fell apart. One man, desperate for attention, phoned in pretending to know where Rachel was. He demanded money. Detectives traced the call. It was a hoax. He was arrested. Ellen broke down when she heard, shouting through tears, "How could anyone do this? How could they use her like that?" Every false lead tore another piece out of the family. Every dead end deepened the ache. Fear spread across Willow Creek. Parents kept their children indoors. Schools issued new security rules. Neighbors double-locked doors, hammered nails into window frames, and left porch lights burning until morning. At church services, Rachel's name filled every prayer. Candles flickered in windows across town. Strangers brought casseroles to the Hart's front step, though Ellen barely touched food. And in hushed voices, people asked questions no one wanted to say aloud. Who could have done this? Was it someone from outside? Or someone right here, among us? Detectives worked without sleep. They interviewed every neighbor. They pulled records of delivery routes and utility workers. They checked local offenders, anyone with a history of trespass or child endangerment. Every theory was tested. None held. The first night closed with silence. The second night followed with more of the same. No ransom. No clue. No Rachel. By the end of the first 48 hours, detectives had a grim understanding. The longer Rachel was gone, the slimmer the chances of bringing her home alive. Inside the Hart house, time slowed to a crawl. Ellen walked the hallway over and over, stopping at Rachel's door. She whispered into the dark, "I am here." Mark drove through the night with search teams, refusing to sit still. Their grief clashed, their anger sparked, but beneath it all lay the same truth. Rachel was gone, and nothing in the world felt safe anymore. The town waited. The family prayed. The investigation dragged forward, heavy with silence. And for the first time, the name Rachel Hart appeared in bold letters across the top of a thick case file. 1992. 1 year later, the Hart's house looked the same from the outside. Yellow siding, porch swing, garden patch. But inside, everything had changed. Rachel's room stayed frozen. Pink sheets smoothed each morning. The stuffed rabbit still on the pillow. The toy cassette recorder under the bed, untouched, dust settling on the buttons. The first anniversary brought a vigil. Dozens gathered with candles. They prayed. They sang softly. They whispered, "Bring Rachel home." Ellen clutched a flyer with her daughter's face, her eyes hollow but unblinking. Mark stood beside her, rigid, silent. 1993 to 1995. Detectives chased new leads. A girl spotted at a gas station. A tip about a carnival worker. A stranger seen with a child near the county line. Each lead collapsed. Each dead end cut deeper. Ellen fell into ritual. Every morning, she checked the mailbox, hoping for a letter, a clue. Every night, she placed fresh flowers by Rachel's school photo on the mantel. She avoided grocery aisles with toys. She avoided the sound of little girls' laughter in parks. Mark buried himself in work. He drove longer routes, sometimes staying away for days. On weekends, he stapled new posters over the weathered ones, refusing to let her face vanish from public sight. But he stopped speaking about Rachel at home. He said her name less, held his grief tighter. Their marriage strained. Ellen clung to hope. Mark tried to accept what logic whispered. Their grief met like water and oil, never blending, always pulling apart. 1996 to 1998. The years rolled on. Other children grew. Neighbors' daughters became teenagers, walked to school dances, learned to drive. For Ellen, Rachel never grew older than 8. She would sit in the pink room some nights, talking out loud, telling Rachel about the weather, about the dog chasing squirrels, about how much she was missed. She pressed her palm to the pillow and whispered, "Come home." Mark stayed quiet. He carried guilt for being away that night. He told no one, but every mile he drove in his truck felt like punishment. His shoulders hunched more. His eyes carried a constant weight. The community moved on. Flyers came down. The story faded from headlines. At church, her name was still spoken in prayer, but fewer candles appeared on the porch. The crowd at the vigils grew smaller each year. 1999. 8 years had passed. The case file gathered dust on a shelf. The sheriff's office received tips less often now, and most were nonsense. Psychics, dreamers, people claiming to feel her presence in distant towns. Detectives wrote each one down, then set the file back on the shelf. Ellen lived in half-light. She went to work, cooked dinner, folded laundry. But her voice grew softer, her laugh rarer. To her, time stood still. The pink room stayed exactly the same. The recorder remained under the bed, ignored. No one thought of it as evidence. No one imagined it still carried a voice waiting to be heard. April 2000. 9 years gone. Rachel would have been 17. On a Saturday afternoon, Ellen finally decided to clean. Not surface tidying, deep sorting. Closets, drawers, boxes she had avoided. She stepped into the pink room. The air felt still, as though it had been holding its breath for 9 years. She pulled down a shoebox of ribbons, a stack of notebooks, a folded quilt. She knelt on the carpet, reached under the bed, and her hand brushed plastic. She pulled out the red and yellow recorder, stickers peeling, dust clinging to its surface. She turned it over in her hands, staring at the taped battery cover. For a long moment she didn't move. Then she went to the kitchen, opened the junk drawer, and found a pack of AA batteries. Back in the room, she slid them into place. Her fingers trembled. She pressed play. The wheels turned. Static filled the speaker. And then, after 9 years of silence, her daughter's voice filled the room. The wheels turned. The recorder gave a faint hum, then the soft hiss of static. Ellen held her breath, frozen. Then came a sound she thought she would never hear again. A child's voice, bright, high, alive. "Hi, my name is Rachel." Ellen's hands shot to her mouth. Tears blurred her vision. For 9 years, she had begged for one more sound, one more glimpse, one more memory. And here it was, pouring from a dusty toy. Rachel began to sing. Off-key, cheerful, full of the innocent rhythm of an 8-year-old. A silly tune about her stuffed rabbit, about spaghetti for dinner, about Annie, her best friend. Ellen sobbed, shoulders shaking, clinging to every note. For a moment, it was as if her daughter had walked back into the room. But then the tape shifted. The song cut off. A shuffle, a creak, muffled movement. Ellen frowned. Then, a man's voice. Low, steady, unfamiliar. "Keep quiet." Ellen froze. Her heart slammed in her chest. Through static, another sound. Rachel's voice, softer now, strained. One single word. "Mommy." The breath caught in Ellen's throat. She felt her knees buckle. Then came the sharp slam of a door. And silence. The tape clicked as it reached the end. Ellen sat still for a long time, the recorder heavy in her lap. Her tears had stopped. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move. For 9 years she had begged for a clue, and now she held one in her hands. A clue her daughter had unknowingly left behind. Her mind spun. Who was the man? How had the recorder survived unnoticed? Why had no one listened back then? Her fingers trembled as she pressed play again. The tape repeated. Rachel's song, the shuffle, the man's voice, the frightened mommy, the slam. Each time, Ellen's chest broke open again. She whispered to herself, "You told me, baby. You told me." At last, she reached for the phone. Her voice shook as she spoke to the sheriff's office. "This is Ellen Hart. I found something in Rachel's recorder. You need to hear it." Within the hour, detectives arrived. Gloves, evidence bags, caution heavy in the air. They took the recorder, labeling it, sealing it as if it were gold. At the lab, specialists worked carefully. They cleaned the audio, filtered the static, slowed the playback. The results were chilling. Rachel's playful song, the muffled shuffle, the male voice, "Keep quiet." Rachel's terrified whisper, "Mommy," the slam of a door. The investigators sat in silence as the tape played. For 9 years they had lacked evidence. Now, a forgotten toy held the moment of abduction itself. The case was alive again. At the sheriff's office, the red and yellow recorder was placed on a steel table. Technicians handled it as if it were fragile glass. They threaded the tape through specialized machines, cleaning static, enhancing faint whispers. The results were undeniable. Rachel's cheerful singing, the shuffle of feet, the male voice, "Keep quiet." Rachel's frightened whisper, "Mommy," and the slam of a door. Investigators sat in silence as it played back. After 9 years of emptiness, they were hearing the crime unfold in real time. One detective finally spoke. "We've been holding the evidence all along." The case file, dusty, thick, neglected, was pulled down from the shelf. Inside were pages of old notes, interviews, half-checked tips. Names scribbled in margins. Some long forgotten. One name kept surfacing, Daniel Price. He had lived 2 streets away in 1991. 26 years old at the time. Odd jobs. A reputation for walking late at night. A neighbor had mentioned seeing him on Willow Creek Road the week before Rachel vanished. He was questioned briefly back then, but with no evidence, he slipped from focus. Now, detectives compared his 1991 interview tape with the voice from Rachel's recorder. The timbre, the clipped cadence, the rasp in his throat. It was close, very close. By 2000, Price no longer lived in Willow Creek. Records showed he had moved 2 towns away, working as a mechanic in a roadside garage. He lived alone in a small rented house at the edge of a highway. Detectives drove out one evening. They knocked on the door. Price answered, older now, hair thinner, but the same cold eyes neighbors remembered. "Do you remember a girl named Rachel Hart?" Detective Miller asked. Price stiffened. His jaw worked. "That was years ago. I already talked to police then." They told him about the recorder, about the voice. His expression flickered. He crossed his arms. "Lots of people sound like that," he muttered. But detectives saw the tension. The way he tapped his finger against the doorframe when the words, "Keep quiet," were mentioned. Price agreed to come to the station. He sat in the interview room, arms folded, answers short. "Where were you the night Rachel disappeared?" "At home." "Anyone who can confirm that?" "My mother. She's gone now." Detectives played the tape. Rachel's song. The male voice. The slam. Price looked away. That could be anyone. But his jaw tightened. His eyes blinked too fast. The signs were there. With the tape as evidence and his history as context, detectives secured a warrant. In his garage, they found a box hidden behind old tires. Inside, children's belongings, toys, ribbons, newspaper clippings about missing kids. And among them, a faded flyer with Rachel Hart's photo. It was damning. News broke quickly. New suspect in 1991 disappearance. Cameras returned to Willow Creek. Neighbors whispered again. "I always thought he was strange." one said. He walked past their house all the time, another recalled. The town buzzed with fear, relief, and anger. After 9 years, the shadow finally had a name. At home, Ellen listened as detectives explained what they'd found. The voice, the flyer, the box. Her body shook. Rage, grief, and relief collided all at once. She clutched the toy recorder against her chest. Her daughter's voice had led them here. The investigation that had been cold for nearly a decade was burning again. With the recorder's evidence and the hidden box from his garage, investigators tightened their case against Daniel Price. Still, the biggest question remained. Where was Rachel? Under mounting pressure, Price finally cracked during questioning. He sat in the gray interview room, voice flat, eyes down. He admitted what investigators had feared. He had entered through the bedroom window that night. He had taken Rachel while she slept. He drove her out of Willow Creek into the woods, to a small cabin where he sometimes stayed. And then his words fell heavy. She got scared. She screamed, panicked. I stopped her. The room went silent. Detectives exchanged a glance. The confession confirmed what Ellen had long feared but never wanted to hear. Price agreed to lead officers to the site. They drove deep into the woods, down roads nearly erased by time. They reached the remnants of a collapsed cabin, half swallowed by weeds and rot. Beneath a patch of soil near the foundation, searchers found what had been hidden for 9 years. Bones, torn fabric, a small, faded ribbon, blue, still threaded with strands of hair. DNA confirmed what the heart already knew. It was Rachel. News broke across Willow Creek the next day. Headlines read, Remains of missing girl found after 9 years. The town mourned together. Neighbors wept openly. Vigils returned. Candles lined the church steps. Parents held their children tighter. But there was also anger. For nearly a decade, Daniel Price had lived freely just miles away, walking streets, shopping in stores, blending into the background while the Harts lived in torment. For Ellen, the discovery was both devastation and release. She sat in Rachel's pink room, clutching the toy recorder, pressing play again and again. The song, the laughter, the frightened whisper. They filled the silence that had haunted her for years. She whispered into the room, You told me, baby. You told me. Mark, who had buried his grief under endless work, finally broke. He wept openly with Ellen for the first time in years, the two of them holding one another as the recorder clicked to silence. In 2001, Daniel Price stood trial for kidnapping and murder. The evidence was overwhelming. The confession, the remains, the box of belongings, the voice on the tape. The jury convicted him. Life in prison without parole. In court, Ellen delivered her statement. Her voice did not waver. My daughter's voice was never silenced. She sang, she laughed, and even in fear, she left us the truth. We lost her, but her voice brought justice. Rachel Hart was laid to rest beneath an oak tree in the town cemetery. Her headstone bore her name, the dates of her short life, and the words, Her voice lives on. The toy recorder was placed on a shelf in Ellen's home, not as evidence anymore but as a keepsake. The last witness to her daughter's life. The house on Willow Creek Road eventually grew quiet again. The garden went wild. The porch swing creaked in the wind. But inside, in the stillness, the memory of a girl with a ribbon in her hair remained. Closure did not heal the wound, but it gave the family something to hold on to. Answers, justice, and the knowledge that Rachel's small voice had guided them when no one else could. With the recorder's evidence and the hidden box from his garage, investigators tightened their case against Daniel Price. Still, the biggest question remained. Where was Rachel? Under mounting pressure, Price finally cracked during questioning. He sat in the gray interview room, voice flat, eyes down. He admitted what investigators had feared. He had entered through the bedroom window that night. He had taken Rachel while she slept. He drove her out of Willow Creek into the woods, to a small cabin where he sometimes stayed. And then his words fell heavy. She got scared. She screamed, panicked. I stopped her. The room went silent. Detectives exchanged a glance. The confession confirmed what Ellen had long feared but never wanted to hear. Price agreed to lead officers to the site. They drove deep into the woods, down roads nearly erased by time. They reached the remnants of a collapsed cabin, half swallowed by weeds and rot. Beneath a patch of soil near the foundation, searchers found what had been hidden for 9 years. Bones, torn fabric, a small, faded ribbon, blue, still threaded with strands of hair. DNA confirmed what the heart already knew. It was Rachel. News broke across Willow Creek the next day. Headlines read, "Remains of missing girl found after 9 years." The town mourned together. Neighbors wept openly. Vigils returned. Candles lined the church steps. Parents held their children tighter. But there was also anger. For nearly a decade, Daniel Price had lived freely just miles away, walking streets, shopping in stores, blending into the background while the Harts lived in torment. For Ellen, the discovery was both devastation and release. She sat in Rachel's pink room, clutching the toy recorder, pressing play again and again. The song, the laughter, the frightened whisper. They filled the silence that had haunted her for years. She whispered into the room, "You told me, baby. You told me." Mark, who had buried his grief under endless work, finally broke. He wept openly with Ellen for the first time in years, the two of them holding one another as the recorder clicked to silence. The house on Willow Creek Road eventually grew quiet again. The garden went wild. The porch swing creaked in the wind. But inside, in the stillness, the memory of a girl with a ribbon in her hair remained. Closure did not heal the wound, but it gave the family something to hold on to. Answers, justice, and the knowledge that Rachel's small voice had guided them when no one else could. With the recorder's evidence and the hidden box from his garage, investigators tightened their case against Daniel Price. Still, the biggest question remained: where was Rachel? Under mounting pressure, Price finally cracked during questioning. He sat in the gray interview room, voice flat, eyes down. He admitted what investigators had feared. He had entered through the bedroom window that night. He had taken Rachel while she slept. He drove her out of Willow Creek into the woods, to a small cabin where he sometimes stayed. And then his words fell heavy. She got scared. She screamed, panicked. I stopped her. The room went silent. Detectives exchanged a glance. The confession confirmed what Ellen had long feared but never wanted to hear. Price agreed to lead officers to the site. They drove deep into the woods, down roads nearly erased by time. They reached the remnants of a collapsed cabin, half swallowed by weeds and rot. Beneath a patch of soil near the foundation, searchers found what had been hidden for 9 years. Bones, torn fabric, a small, faded ribbon, blue, still threaded with strands of hair. DNA confirmed what the heart already knew. It was Rachel. News broke across Willow Creek the next day. Headlines read, "Remains of missing girl found after 9 years." The town mourned together. Neighbors wept openly. Vigils returned. Candles lined the church steps. Parents held their children tighter. But there was also anger. For nearly a decade, Daniel Price had lived freely just miles away, walking streets, shopping in stores, blending into the background while the Harts lived in torment. For Ellen, the discovery was both devastation and release. She sat in Rachel's pink room, clutching the toy recorder, pressing play again and again. The song, the laughter, the frightened whisper. They filled the silence that had haunted her for years. She whispered into the room, "You told me, baby. You told me." Mark, who had buried his grief under endless work, finally broke. He wept openly with Ellen for the first time in years, the two of them holding one another as the recorder clicked to silence. In 2001, Daniel Price stood trial for kidnapping and murder. The evidence was overwhelming: the confession, the remains, the box of belongings, the voice on the tape. The jury convicted him. Life in prison without parole. In court, Ellen delivered her statement. Her voice did not waver. "My daughter's voice was never silenced." She sang, She laughed, and even in fear, she left us the truth. We lost her, but her voice brought justice. Rachel Hart was laid to rest beneath an oak tree in the town cemetery. Her headstone bore her name, the dates of her short life, and the words, "Her voice lives on." The toy recorder was placed on a shelf in Ellen's home, not as evidence anymore but as a keepsake. The last witness to her daughter's life. The house on Willow Creek Road eventually grew quiet again. The garden went wild. The porch swing creaked in the wind. But inside, in the stillness, the memory of a girl with a ribbon in her hair remained. Closure did not heal the wound, but it gave the family something to hold on to. Answers, justice, and the knowledge that Rachel's small voice had guided them when no one else could. In the end, the story of Rachel Hart was not only about a crime. It was about time, memory, and the persistence of love. 9 years passed before the truth was found. 9 years of silence, broken only when a forgotten toy spoke louder than any witness. A red and yellow recorder, left under a bed, became the key that unlocked a mystery. It reminds us that nothing disappears completely. Not voices, not truth, not love. Sometimes the smallest object carries the weight of everything we seek. For Ellen, pressing play was the hardest moment of her life. She heard her daughter sing. She heard her daughter afraid. And yet, it was that recording that brought justice, that gave Rachel her voice again. Closure is not the same as healing. Healing never fully came for the Harts. But closure allowed them to breathe, to stand, to speak Rachel's name with certainty, knowing her story had been told. Her voice, captured in play, in fear, in the innocence of childhood, still echoes. It echoes in the reminder to hold on to the small things, to listen carefully, and to never forget that hope can hide in the quietest places. And as Ellen said at the trial, "My daughter's voice was never silenced." It is true. Her voice lives on, not only on tape, not only in a courtroom, but in every heart that refuses to let the lost be forgotten. Rachel Hart's story reminds us that even in silence, truth can survive. A forgotten recorder carried the voice of a child who refused to disappear. It became the evidence that brought justice after nearly a decade of waiting. The lesson is simple but profound. Never overlook the small details. Hope can live in the quietest corners, and love leaves traces stronger than time itself. Here on Storyline Chronicles, we keep these voices alive. If the story touched you, like, comment, and subscribe. Your support ensures these stories are never forgotten, because every story matters. Every voice deserves to be heard.